All right, we're gonna get going here, so thanks for being here. Before we jump into our class today, we have a few announcement things. So you're gonna go first, Crystal?
Yeah, I can go
Okay,
first.
Crystal's gonna go, and then Jim will go after.
I don't really have a title tip today.
Okay.
But hi again.
Hi.
As always, I am here for you guys. I guess one thing that I have been noticing recently are a lot of last minute adding of buyers or accommodation fees at closing. So if you know that your buyer is married and they're buying a home individually but want to add their wife or their husband at the end of the transaction, let title know ahead of time, because we have to do a date down and a name search for that person being added to title. And we have to do a deed, and then typically we're okay covering the accommodation fee. That's not a problem, but that is an extra fee that should be charged to the client. So the more you know in advance that they're adding in someone at the end of the transaction, we'll take care of it, we'll help you, but just know that there's extra steps at recording time that will need to be done that could potentially delay something if we find a name match for a lien or something like that. So again, just kind of keep it in the back of your head while you're doing that, and that's about it for today. Okay?
Okay.
Sweet, thanks guys.
Thank you.
My turn.
Your turn.
Go Jazz.
Yeah.
Game 2. I'm excited. You know what? I'm a fair weather fan. And I'll admit it. It drives my family crazy. So like the first half of this game, I was like, it's over. The Jazz are awful. I hate to say it. But then all of a sudden they came back and won. It was so cool. Okay, real quick. I just wanted to talk about credit reports just for maybe a minute. This credit report, his credit score was 695. It's a pretty good score, right? But as I started looking at it a little closely, you can see where I kind of got my pen and I started making some notes here, and that carried over to this page. And what I was looking at closely was he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 student loans. You see that a lot. People have student loans, right? So here's the interesting thing. This guy's an attorney. He went to law school, took on a lot of student loan debt, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot. Now, it shows a balance, shows the student loan balance, and then it shows a zero payment. And we see that a lot because, student loans get pushed off. They can go into deferment where you don't have to make payments. And over the years, we didn't have to, a lot of times we didn't have to use that payment or have a payment associated with it if it didn't show a payment. Those rules have changed. This guy's doing a conventional loan. So on conventional loans, we have Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Those are the two we underwrite to their guidelines. So you take the balance. So now what we have to do right now on a conventional loan, we take the loan balance, and if they're showing a zero payment because he doesn't have to make payments right now, the payment's in default, or not in default, sorry, deferment. We have to take on Fannie Mae, we have to take 1% of that student, if it's not showing a payment, we have to take 1% of the balance and use that as the payment to qualify. So I just wanted to point that out because it gets a little tricky. He has 12. So I looked at this and I did the math. I took those 12 student loans and I put in 1%, and I was like, he doesn't qualify. He really didn't. So then I quickly looked at the guidelines and we went to Freddie Mac. Freddie Mac, fortunately, the guideline's different, and we only have to use 0.5%. So I hurried, did the math, 0.5%, he qualifies. So just wanted to point that out. Student loans are, people have them, they're out there. It's part of, when we see them probably on 50 or 60% of all credit reports. So just wanted to share that tip with you that some people think, well, God, I don't need to make a payment. The payment's in, I shouldn't have to put a payment in there. It's deferred. I want to qualify for more. And we're like, I know, but that's not the way that the government is operating right now. We have to show a payment. So That's the credit tip.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How quickly can you raise your credit score? Like, if I have somebody who's like paying off some of their debts, how quickly should that reflect on their score?
So that's a great question. This company we work with, this credit company that we work with, we're partners with. And most credit companies have a really cool, sophisticated website that we go to, we log in. So to answer your question, we would log in to this Credit Plus's website. We would go to a section that says, it's the what if simulator. There's a simulator. It's a what if simulator, and their system is tied right into the three major credit bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. So they communicate, and it says, what if this client paid off this $3,000 credit card? What if they paid off this $4,000 student loan? What if they paid off this credit card or this or that? You hit submit, and it tells you right then. And you have a small window, it says, okay, if you do this within 30 days, their credit score should increase by 38 points or 46 points or whatever. And so it can be done quickly. And so we do that all the time.
Just like a quick thing, so I'm working with Inspira right now.
Come up here, just the people online.
Yeah, so I'm working with Inspira right now to get approved for my home loan. And they provided me this breakdown for the credit report because I want to qualify for a certain loan and for a certain rate. So like, okay, so what's really awesome is they sit down with your clients, as they did it with me, and they show you, okay, if you pay off $2,000, this is where your credit score will go. If you pay off $7,000, this is where your credit score would go. So it's really cool that they have that system because they break it down for your clients and show them their options. And when you get your credit score to here, this would be the rate or what loan you qualify for. So it's pretty cool. So firsthand experience with that, because it's helped me get qualified for what I would need
Cool.
to qualify for. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's great. No, that's exactly what it's made for, the tool. The credit report and the credit bureaus and the credit company we work with, they all really sophisticated now, lots of cool tools like that. And it really does help. To Crystal's point, that you may have someone, because on a conventional loan and even on FHA, the credit tiers, the credit score tiers are every 20 points, 600, 620, 640, 660, 680. So, on a conventional loan, especially, if you can get one tier higher, let's say from 680 to 700 or 700 to 720, it will help your credit score. Your interest rate. It'll help your interest rate. So a lot of times, if someone's at 720 or above, you usually don't worry about it. But if they're 640 or 638 or 627, what can we do? What can we do? So yeah, it comes into play a lot. Was there someone else that had a question?
So you're talking about like the 1% of like a student loan that needs to be paid off. Is that just, you just need to pay it off, or?
So that the 1% comes into if there's a zero payment showing on that credit line.
Yeah.
If a payment is not showing, then on Fannie Mae, we have to use 1% of the balance to calculate a payment.
So they still don't even have to pay it technically, but you have to factor that in.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a tricky deal.
I have a question. So for student loans, if they're in deferment, but the interest has accrued, still accruing, and it's over the original loan amount balance, would the client have to pay it down, or just set up? Would you recommend them set up a payment to just show?
If the interest has exceeded the original balance, we're okay with that.
Okay.
We're only focused on the payment. And so we'll either do the 1% rule or the 0.5% rule to come up with that payment. Or if they can provide documentation from the student loan company, we can use that payment as well. That makes sense? Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank
Yeah.
okay, that's class for today. Thanks for being here. All right, so I think where I will start today is a little bit of a reminder. So I'm not going to write it on the board, but just from Tuesday, what we talked about the 4 phases, and He's throwing his pen at you, yeah. Is about the 4 phases of the first thing that happens is the activities phase. And I mentioned to you guys and asked you the question of in real estate school, how much did they teach you about how to sell real estate? To which the answer was nothing, right? They really didn't teach you how to do that. Now, so the thought that I was having this morning as I was thinking about that is just ultimately what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to start today by first giving you the and we're going to talk about the buyer cycle and the seller cycle, the process that they go through. And it's important that you understand that because it'll make a difference in how you approach your prospecting. But I think once we've done that, then what I think we're going to do is I'm going to go through and we're going to make a list up here of all the ways you could generate leads that you can work. And then we're going to go through and we're going to talk about, okay, how do you do those effectively? And I guess what I want to preface this whole thing with is you got to start doing something if you're not. And I don't know who is or who isn't, but I do know I've trained enough new agents to know that a lot of the times an agent will get their license. They, like we talked about yesterday, because the way that this works is you're running your own business. Because of that, they kind of get paralyzed and don't do anything because it's kind of like, well, I'm scared or I'm not sure what to do and what I don't know what to say and how to, what if they ask me a question, I don't know the answer. Just know the only way it gets better is you got to go do it. And I remember being there. I remember being in that position of going to like an office sales meeting and then afterwards, like trying to look around and kind of like, what is everybody doing? And trying to like figure out who I could copy, I guess is what I'm saying. And just know you just got to get started doing it. And so that was my point when I had written that up here yesterday of that, or Tuesday, that activities phase, the contacts phase, the appointments phase. It is too easy to get stuck in the activities phase of, well, I'll start tomorrow. And at first I need to get ready so that when I'm ready, I'll be ready to get ready to start getting ready. Like that's not what we want to do. Okay. So you got to get started and just start this, find somebody else and say, can I sit next to you and prospect with you or whatever? Like just get started doing it. Okay. Now, so with that in mind, here's what we're going to do is the first thing that I want to talk about is when you are prospecting, you want to be prospecting on what I call 2 parallel tracks. Okay. So this we're going to talk about the buyer and seller cycle to begin with. But before we get into that, I want you to understand this piece because the buyer and seller cycle is tied to this. So whenever you are prospecting, think of it this way, is you should have a primary objective and a secondary objective. So whether you're calling people on the phone or you're knocking on their door or talking to them face to face, you have a primary objective and you have a secondary objective. Now, I had an agent just in my office an hour ago, maybe a little longer than that, but I had an agent in my office asking me some questions about, okay, I'm going to do an open house this Saturday. Tell me how to do it. Well, the first thing that I'm always going to go to, if somebody asks me a question about, okay, how do I do this in terms of prospecting, you always have to come back to your primary objective is that you want to set an appointment. So keep in mind, whenever you are doing any form of prospecting, that you're doing it on parallel tracks, meaning you're doing 2 things at the same time. Okay. So you're looking for the now business, which most agents, what gets them in trouble is this. And when I say trouble, I don't mean like real trouble, but the thing that holds them back from success is we get so focused on the now business that I want to find somebody who is going to buy a house or sell their house tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock because I need to pay off my student loans that we were just talking about. So I need the money. I need to pay my bills. So we get so focused on the now business that we forget about the second track, which is the future business. See, you could live your career out focusing only on now business, looking for people who are ready to buy or sell tomorrow. You can do that. But here's what I will tell you. If you do that, the business will never get any easier for you. It is gonna be a grind day in and day out. But if you will do it this way, which is prospecting on two parallel tracks, meaning I'm looking for the now business, but at the same time that you're doing that. In fact, let me ask it this way. How many of you plan on still being in real estate a year from now? Anybody not? I'm always curious to see if somebody doesn't raise their hand, because I'm gonna be like, okay, so like, what's your plan? Okay. But so here's the question. If you plan on being in real estate a year from now, and you met somebody today who wasn't gonna buy or sell tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, but they were going to in, let's say, 9 months, would you wanna stay in touch with them?
Yeah.
Like, I hope that's like, just kind of makes sense to you that like, but unfortunately, there are some people, and there's one trainer out there that would tell you, who cares about this? You need to pay your bills tomorrow. Keep going until you find somebody who's going to do that. And that will work, by the way. It will work. But my point, what I'm trying to get you to see is, if you approach it that way, it is going to be a grind for the rest of your career. Meaning that you're going to constantly, you'll never stop looking for now business. And you're never going to stop anyway, but the business will not get easier. That's what I'm really saying. If all you do is focus on now business, the business will not get any easier. So you have to, as you are prospecting, have primary objective and a secondary. So your primary objective, let me just test you to see. What's your primary objective when you're prospecting? Good job. That's right. Is your primary objective is, I want to set an appointment. I need to set an appointment. So every single phone call you get on, every door knock you do, anytime you're talking to people, your primary objective is, the first thing I'm trying to focus on is getting an appointment from this person that I'm talking to. That's got to be the first thing. But in the event that they're not ready now, because you are going to have people who just, for whatever reason, they're not doing it until the end of the year or whatever, or 9 months from now. It just doesn't matter. You're going to come across people that they're just not ready yet. Well, if what you do is only focus on an appointment and just move on from those people, a year from now, you're going to still need business. You're going to still want business. Well, why not at the same time line those up so that while I'm building my business for today, for tomorrow, why not also be setting it up for 6 to 9 months or a year from now? That's kind of where I'm going. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Okay. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to try to get an appointment. And I don't think I said this to you guys on Tuesday. We talked about connect, create value, and close. The thing that I don't think I said to you guys is the close part. In order for you to get an appointment with people, you're typically going to have to ask between 3 and 5 times before they say yes. So when you're prospecting, you're on the phone, you're knocking on a door, you're just talking to somebody, you're typically going to have to ask them for an appointment between 3 and 5 times before they're going to say yes. Meaning, you walk into a department store. We got the mall just down the street here, the Fashion Place Mall. You walk into there. When you walk into the store, what's the first thing they ask you in the department store? How can I help you? And what do you say?
I'm just looking.
Right? That's how we respond, right? Oh, I'm just looking. And then what do they do?
Hang around, like, still watch it.
Yeah, but typically they go, okay, well, let me know if I can help you. And then we go walk through. See, we all have a reflex no. That is the reflex. Even if you were walking in the store and you wanted their help, most of the time people are going to say, can I help you? No, I'm just looking. And then 2 minutes later, you're over there. Can you show me where the whatever is? So we all have a reflex no. So just keep in mind, the first time you ask somebody for an appointment, there's only 5 ways in the English language: what time, which time, how soon, when, and where. The first time you say that, most of the time they're going to say, no, not interested, just looking, was curious, whatever. Okay. So you're going to have to ask between 3 and 5 times. In the event that I've done that, though, I've asked 3 times, or let's just say I've even asked 5 times and they've told me no. The next thing that I want to do then is based on this, what we're talking about is I'm looking for people who are going to do something later on. Now, I'll explain more about that here in just one second. But so the secondary objective then would be to get a lead. But what's the purpose of me getting a lead? Okay, for what purpose? You're right on. Is I'm gonna get a lead, somebody I can stay in touch with. For what purpose? That's right. So when you are doing lead follow-up, keep in mind the purpose of it is to get an appointment, which ties back to the primary objective. So, good.
How soon, like, from the point of setting an appointment to like, closing a transaction, so like, or even a better question is, from what point do they turn to a lead to where you want to set an appointment? They say 9 months, do you want to set that appointment like 7 months down the road?
Good question.
2 months to really, because it does take like, what, 2 months to like, from you sign the buyer broker to them putting keys in their house, it's at least like 2 months, right? As you're really good, maybe a month.
So I'm gonna hold on answering, I'm gonna work towards answering that question here. And in fact, actually, let's do it right now. Okay, so let's do that right now. So the next thing we're gonna talk about here is the buyer / seller cycle. Okay. Now, this is the process that people are gonna go through before they buy or sell. So so I'm gonna kind of work towards it. I'm not sure that this is fully gonna answer. If it might, if it fully answers it, then tell me. Otherwise, I'll give you the answer. But so anytime somebody is going to buy or sell, so they're thinking about buying or selling, there is a process that they're gonna go through. And that process, sliding. There you go. So there's this process that they're gonna go through in terms of before they're going to actually do it. So I meet somebody that says, yes, we want to buy or sell, or we're thinking about buying or selling, but we're not going to do it until let's just say school starts. I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's going to be October is when we're going to do it. Well, I'm probably not necessarily going to want to set an appointment with them right then, but I do want to capture them as a lead to stay in touch with. Okay. All right. So now here's what's going on though. Is this process looks like this. So it's broken down into 3 phases that look like this. The first thing that's going to happen when people decide that they are going to buy or sell, but here's the problem. They don't know they're deciding. But the first decision that's going to take place is what we call percolation. Okay, percolation. What does the word, when you hear the word percolate, what do you think of? Filter, okay, good.
Bubbling.
Bubbling, I like it, good. Any other thoughts? Okay, good. So I like to use the one of bubbling or a cycling, the filtering idea of it cycling through, okay? So the first thing that happens when people are going to be buying or selling, now, they don't know this is going on, by the way. So I'm going to give you an example about this. So I told you guys on Tuesday the story of how I got my license. I came into real estate. We went through the activities, the contacts, the appointments. I mentioned to you that when I quit focusing on a number of contacts and instead focused on, I am going to prospect until I set an appointment. I told you that after that happened, the next year I doubled my business, my income doubled. My prospecting decreased, so I did less prospecting but made more money. And then the next year doubled my income again. And I would say the prospecting stayed about the same that next year, but it had cut in half from what I was doing. And then the next year, it almost doubled again from just setting an appointment, okay? So at that point, a friend of mine that I had gone to high school with ended up, he had bought a home in the same neighborhood that I was living in, and wasn't planned out that way. Just one day I'm out like walking around and I see him and I'm like, what are you doing here? Oh, we bought this house over here. And so he and I had been friends in high school. So now we're somewhat neighbors and we just would start talking a lot. Well, after this had happened, now I had been in the business about 3 years-ish. And he said to me, hey, so when are you going to move? And I was like, one day I was like, what do you mean, when am I going to move? And he's like, well, I just figured like real estate's going well for you. This home was more of like a starter home. I just assumed you were going to move. And I was like, It had never even crossed my mind to move at that point. And so I was like, I have no plans to move. Like, and in fact, I said, if real estate keeps going like it is, I'll just stay here and I'll pay off my house and we'll be here. And he was like, oh, okay, well, I just assumed you would move. Now, here's what I didn't know at the time, but not long after that, I learned this process. So here's what happened. The day that he said to me, when are you going to move? Now that I understand this process, he planted a seed in me to move. I didn't recognize it at the time, and it took a long time before I recognized it. But now that I understand this, I can look back on that scenario and say, I see what caused this to take place. So he had just said, if you ever were to move, or no, excuse me, when are you going to move? And I said, no plans to move. Well, here's what happened is not long after that, I am driving. So my first house was out on 5600 West and 6200 South for you guys, if you're familiar with it. So this is 6200 South, here's 5600 West. My uncle was a builder and I had gone into him and he's like, yeah, we're building this subdivision. So I had built a house in this neighborhood right here. Well, my office that I worked on in real estate was out at 7800 South and Redwood Road. So this is Redwood Road right here. And so what would happen is I would leave my house, I would drive down and either get to Bangerter and go to 78th, or I would go all the way to Redwood Road and then go down to 78th to go to my office. Well, not long, and I don't remember, I wish I could remember, like I wish I would have known how profound this was going to be because I would have kept notes on it. But so I don't remember how long this was, but I remembered, and any of you, if you have driven along 6200 South and Bangerter here, especially even right now, the traffic is bad coming this way in the morning and going back this way at night till you got past Bangerter, then it was fine. Well, I remember I'm sitting in traffic right here the one day, and I don't, like I said, I don't know if this was a month after, a week after, the day after, 2 weeks after, somewhere in that range though. I'm sitting there in the traffic and I have this thought. Well, if I ever did move, I would make sure it was east of Bangerter Highway because I hate this traffic. Now, what was going on that I was not aware of, but that's percolation. So think of percolation, the word percolate as it's kind of bubbling up. It's happening under the surface, okay? What was happening is I was then in percolation. So not long after that, I'm driving along here on 6200 South and I get past Bangerter Highway and right here is 3200 West and here's 2700 West. And again, I don't know how, I don't know if it was a month later, 6 weeks, I don't know. But I've had this thought of, if I ever move, it's going to be east of Bangerter Highway. Well, a few weeks later, I'm driving along here and I get to 3200 West. And as I'm driving down here, I notice they're building new homes in here. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And so the next time I drove by there with my wife in the car, I said to her, did you notice they're building new houses right there? And she was like, no, I hadn't noticed that. I'm like, yeah, they look like they're kind of nice. Every bit of this is percolation now, okay? Now, if you had come and knocked on, if I wasn't an agent, and if you had come and knocked on my door and said, hey, we just listed this home over here and it's got this many bedrooms and this many baths, and I'm just wondering who you know that wants to move into the area, I would have said nobody. And if you'd have said, when do you plan on moving? I would have said, never. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to pay off this house. I'm going to be here forever. Yet, what also at the same time of that is percolation is happening. Okay, so not long after that, I'm driving there one day. I decide I'm going to turn down 3200 West and drive through the street that goes through there. And I notice that as I do that, I notice there's this community park and a pool and all this stuff here. And they're building a model home right here. And I'm like, these are some nice houses. So the model home is almost done at that point. So the next time I'm in the car with my wife, I said to her, you got to see this. So I turn and we drive down here. I'm like, look at this. Like, look at this park and it's got a pool and all this stuff. And the model home is, and I don't remember if the first time we went through the model home was done or not, but eventually I said to my wife, should we stop and just go in and take a look at the houses at the model home? Now, when I walked into the model home here and the agent said, thanks for coming, what did I say? Well, I mean, yeah, but thanks for
Oh,
coming.
we're
Can I
just
help
looking.
you?
Yeah, we're
They-
just looking.
Yeah. So, and I actually had even one better than that. Because I'm an agent, here's what I said to her when I walked in the door. I'm a real estate agent and I just like to be familiar with the inventory in the area so I can tell my clients about it. So we're here just so that I can see, so I can tell my clients about it. Now, to some extent, at a conscious level, I think I truly believed that that's all it was. Because again, if you would have asked me, I promise you, the next time I went to the office, if we were sitting there talking and you had said to me, so hey, you're gonna be moving, I would have said, no way, nope, not moving. Yet, we would walk through that. Now, so that leads us to the second phase of this, the second piece of this. So the first part of this buyer cycle, the first thing that people are going to do before they buy or sell is they're going to go through this phase of percolation where they're just thinking about it. But it's thinking about it at more of an unconscious level, which is why we say percolation, is it's kind of happening under the surface. It's happening with things of like, for example, that same house, doing the dishes, I was like, the next home we build has to have a light above the sink because I hate how dark it is when I'm doing the dishes and I can't see, very well with it. Like those type of things are like my next house is that when they're just start talking like that or thinking like that, that's percolation. Okay. All right. After you've percolated for a while, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to go into the next phase, which is what we call information gathering. So the next step is information gathering. Now, again, I didn't realize this was happening, but the moment we stopped and we went into the model home, I said to the model home agent, I'm a real estate agent. We're not planning on, I'm only here because now, which by the way, why do we say that? Why when I walked in, am I telling her I'm a real estate agent and we're just here to get a feel for the inventory?
Natural reaction is to have a guard up, especially with sales.
Okay, good. But why? Yeah. For what reason? Why do I want to guard?
People don't like to be sold.
That's right. We like to buy, but we don't want to be sold. So it's our guard to be, so it was my way of don't try to get me to buy one of these properties because I'm only here as a real estate agent to check it out. Okay. Yet again, and I don't know if it was, again, I wish I would have kept notes on this because I don't know if it was that same day. But after my wife and I walked through the property, so I don't know if we went back a second day, I really don't remember, but so I'll just say it was the first day. We walked through and we're looking at it, we're like, oh, look at this kitchen, look at this and check that out. And oh, look at this master bathroom, it's huge and this and that. And I remember at some point walking back to that agent and saying, so how many cul-de-sac lots do you have? Now, here's what I will tell you. At that moment is when I for sure, looking back now, I can tell you, I had moved out of perk. If you ask me, and I'm, not qualified to say if this was or wasn't true, but I think walking in the door of the model home, I was still in percolation, but before I left, I had moved to information gathering. Because I walked down and I was like, so do you have any cul-de-sac lots? And she was like, yeah, we got this one right here and it's going to be this much of a premium to get that lot, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, okay. And then we left. Now, same thing. Here's the thing. Still at that point, if you had asked me, even though now I'm in I've moved from percolation into information gathering. At that moment, if you had come and knocked on my door or called me on the phone and you said, when do you plan on moving? Guess what I would have said?
I don't think we're gonna move.
I wouldn't even have said, I don't think. I would have said, I'm not moving. Because here's the thing. In looking at it rationally, I was looking at it from the standpoint of if I keep doing as well in real estate as I am, I'm going to have my house paid off in a couple of years. I'll be out of debt. I'll have zero and I won't have to, like, that logically would have made sense. But here's what I'll tell you is we went back to that there again and was like, so if we wanted to reserve one of these lots, what would that look like? And she said, well, this is what you'd have to do, and you give us $500 and we'll hold it for you, and then you have X amount of time to decide if you want to do it or not, and blah, blah, blah. So we did. Put money down on the lot. Now, here's the other thing though. This is a little bit of a side note to this, but something just for you guys to kind of keep in mind of sometimes us as agents get in the way of a transaction taking place. And what I mean by that is while we were in there and I was talking to them, which actually interesting. Jacob, are you on? Yep, he is. Okay, good. This story involves your dad, by the way. So Jacob Duncan's, he's on Zoom, but so I go in there and we're talking about it, and we were looking at a cul-de-sac lot, and I was asking her, well, can you tell me about the people who have bought these other lots? And they said, oh yeah, the person who, which pause for a minute for Jacob that's listening online. The lot we were looking at was the Kings, not the one I bought, just for him to know. But so when I said it, I said, if we bought this lot, who's going to be our neighbors? And they said, well, on this side of you is a dentist, and which is Jacob's dad. On the other side of you is a doctor. And then across, kind of looking straight out the door, you would run in, kind of around the cul-de-sac a little, is another doctor. And so my wife and I left and we went home, and we're kind of talking about, should we really do this? Or we put money down on the lot, but then we're sitting there talking about, should we do this or should we not do this? And here's what happened is, one other thing before we left. So I have my whole life, and you can judge me all you want, I don't care, is I've grown up on the west side. Like, I know there's this stigma of west side, east side kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Throw my west side son. So but I went to high school at Cypress High School, and like I grew up almost in Magna, not quite, but my older brother always says, I grew up in Magna. I'm like, you didn't grow up in Magna. He's like, I know, but I just like to say that because then people are afraid of you, because you lived in Magna. But so I like have all, and even still to this day, I'm like, as much as I like the views on this side, I like what you get for your money out there. So we're in there, and the agent says to me, because I was kind of just asking her questions about who was living in the neighborhood and she says, I have lived on the east side my entire life, and I would live in this neighborhood. Well, as she said it, I was kind of like, oh, okay. And then, we left. And as that kind of rolled around in my head, I was like, are the people that live in there snobs then? Are they east side snobs that live in this neighborhood? And I remember saying to my wife, like, a dentist, 2 doctors, like, we don't fit in with doctors and dentists. Like, I'm a real estate agent. I'm not like those guys are. And I'm picturing too that doctors and dentists in my mind were old, like they're old people. And so I was kind of like, ugh. So in actuality, the fact of her like trying to sell me on how great the neighborhood is, and she's lived the east side her whole life, and she would live in this neighborhood, and I'm going to have a dentist next to me and a doctor on the other side of me and a doctor out, and I'm like, we have young kids, like I'm not going to fit in with these old guys. And so my wife and I actually went back in and we said, never mind, we're canceling, we don't, give us our money back, we're not going to buy it. And we went back about our business. Now, here's the thing that I want, and I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but this is so crucial for you guys to understand. During this process, this percolation and even information gathering, because they haven't made a decision to do it, it is not going to be uncommon for them to be in, then they're out. They're in, they're interested, then they're not. So when you get them back here, remember, our first objective is I want to set an appointment, but if I can't set an appointment, then I want to capture them as a lead. When you're doing lead follow-up, it is not going to be unusual for people to respond and be excited and then all of a sudden go cold on you. The reason they go cold is because they're still in this part of the process. And it is a process that they've got to go through and work through. Now, not everybody is going to be the exact same time to get through it. Some are going to go faster than others through it. But And the other problem is you don't know where they're at in this. Now, typically, I will say to you, most of the time, if it's like an internet lead or something, they're probably in this part of the phase, but they're early in this part of the phase. Unless they have come to you and said, we have a question about a property. If they do that, they're in for sure this phase and they're in the latter part of it. But if they've just gone onto the internet and started searching, they're early. In their mind, they may not even realize they've moved into information gathering. They're that early in the process. And even though I've drawn it with a line here, there's not a like clear line. It kind of transitions from here to here. It isn't like all of a sudden they know, oh yeah, we're now information gathering. Like it doesn't, it just kind of, they're still just curious or whatever, okay? So we go back in and we say, never mind, we're not gonna buy in there. And the real reason was I felt like I don't fit in with those type of people is truly what had happened. So the agent in trying to sell me on it actually convinced me not to do it. So we cancel it, we go away from it, and then I don't remember how many months it was, 2, 3, 4 months later of me continuously driving, getting stuck in traffic, driving past here, driving past the neighborhood, seeing more houses being built and all this stuff coming to play. I just kept, I just really like those houses. I just really want to be there. So here's what happened, actually. My wife and I, so the cul-de-sac that we were looking at and that I live in actually now is right here. On the other side of the park is another cul-de-sac. So the one day I'm driving through there and ultimately like here's what was going on is we were trying, again, not at a conscious level, but we were trying to figure out a way to convince ourselves that we could buy in this neighborhood, meaning that it was going to be okay. So what happened is I drove down this cul-de-sac because these people had pretty much all moved in. This cul-de-sac was still being built. So we drove in and as we drove through, I noticed a guy with his twins out. He's out mowing his lawn and he's got 2 little twins pushing little lawnmowers around behind him. And I still remember saying to my mom, my wife, she's my mom too sometimes, but I remember saying to my wife, oh, look, there's some young people that live here. It's not all just old people. And that was enough for us. Like we were then convinced. So we went back to the model home after that, after we had driven through the circle, went back into the model home and I said, is that lot still available? And she said, no, it's not available anymore. And she said, but there is one that's on the corner right here. So we were looking at the one down here. She said, this one here on the corner is available. But I was like, I already lived on a corner lot. And so FYI, there's another key piece for you guys to see on this too. One of the things that I swore I would never do again is live on a corner lot. I hated being on the corner. I hate having to shovel the sidewalk all the way around. And anyway, I just was like, I will never be on a corner lot ever again. Well, we go in and she goes, the only one available right now is that. If you want to wait till other phases open, you could get one of those. Well, I didn't want to wait till other phases. So I actually then said, well, all right, I'll take it. But because the other house, I was on a corner lot and I had a north facing driveway, and which that was another thing I swore I'd never do again. And so I said, well, we'll do it because it's west facing, not north facing driveway. So we'll do it. Well, so we put the money down. My wife goes to the construction meeting. I was gone up to fish the Green River and she goes to the construction meeting and they say that the only way your house will fit there is we have to turn and put the driveway this way, which means it's now north facing. So I didn't want a corner lot and I didn't want a north facing driveway, but the only way you could fit a 3-car garage was you had to flip the garage to the side. And
What's the north facing? What's wrong with north facing?
Oh, it ices
I-
up.
yeah,
I-
it doesn't
I-
melt.
yeah.
The snow doesn't like,
It's like always shadow.
your driveway will be icy all the time versus south facing. The sun hits it and it'll melt the snow. Like a lot of times a south facing driveway won't even have to shovel and I'm out there shoveling.
You really don't want like a west and east facing, right? Because then the sun is like this great in your window. That's what I know. It's like you wake up and the sun's just like.
Right there, yeah.
Right.
South facing driveway is best. So, okay, so, but here's the point. We wanted, and we'll talk more about this in the needs analysis class. I'll reference back to some of this. It met enough of my needs that I was willing, even though if you were my agent, I would have been saying to you, do not show me any homes that are on corner lots and no north facing driveways yet. That's what I ended up buying. So we ended up putting money down, we ended up buying it. Then we found out that Jacob's dad lived next door, who was a new dentist, not an old dentist, so he was young. And the doctors were right out of med school, both of them. So it was like, we did fit in, I guess. 'Cause I just pictured doctors as being these old men. I didn't realize that you could be, 30 and be a doctor. I thought you had to be 60. I don't know. And that's how stupid I was, I guess. But anyway. So we ended up buying in there. Now, so here's the thing. So here's what I want you to understand. So forget the story doesn't matter. It's just to help you understand this. The first thing that's going to happen is they're going to go through a percolation phase where they're just thinking about it. And it's usually just stuff like, well, if we did buy, this is what we would want, kind of a thing. Information gathering is when they start now kind of like trying to see, well, does it exist? And could we afford it? And what would it look like? And would we be able to get what we want? And all those things are taking place in information gathering. Then the last phase is what we would call the active. In the active phase is what you guys, prior to this class, you would have thought anybody that you have worked with as a client, like you would have thought back here under this now, but it's kind of tying this together for you. When I'm saying that people are prospecting, typically looking for the now people, you're typically trying to find the people who are active. The ones who are like, yeah, we want to buy a house in the next month or two. Like we want to get going right away. Or yes, we're going to sell our house and we want to put it on the market in the next month. That's typically what you're thinking of is who is in this phase, okay? This piece of the phase is usually a 45-day window. Now that's going to obviously vary person to person, but I'm going to actually show to you guys here in a little bit. Oh, I got to pick up the pace. I'm going to show you here in a minute a survey that NAR does every year. And I'm not going to show you this particular piece, but one of the questions that they ask the people is, how long did you look at a home before you bought one? And typically what they're going to say is it averages out, and this varies based upon the market, like meaning in today's market, people are probably looking a little bit longer because they just can't find it, like they can't get a house under contract. So this is going to vary, but as a general rule, if you were to average it out over time, it's a 45-day window from when they become active until they put a property under contract. Like from when they, so yeah, so to some extent, think of, but yet, actually, let me do it this way. This whole process is typically a 6 to 9 month window. So meaning, from before somebody actually puts a property under contract, they start to think about it 6 to 9 months before they're going to do it. That's why I asked you the question of if you are going to be in business a year from now and you come across somebody, and actually, by the way, here's the other piece of it that I hope you caught on to, but just in case you didn't, I'm going to tell you. The fact of you calling somebody on the phone or knocking on their door and you asking them, if you ever were to move, where would you go next? Could be the seed that starts them to do it. Now, here's what I mean by that. Part of where I got that from is I mentioned to you guys on Tuesday that I would go door knocking 2 hours every day. Well, and with Shirley and I, we had a neighborhood out in Kearns that we liked to go and knock on the doors. And the reason I liked them is there's an area out there, the name of the subdivision is Hoffman Heights. And the reason I liked knocking on those doors, back then, you could buy one for $80,000. And so for me, I was like, if you get one of those listed, they would just sell because they were like the cheapest thing you could find on the market. Today, they're probably $350 or something. I don't know how much they are about. But we love to door knock it because there were basically two styles of homes. Like there was either this floor plan or that floor plan. And it is like, I don't know exactly, but it's probably about a mile square that this neighborhood is, and every house in there is one of two styles, pretty much. I mean, that's not 100% true, pretty much. To where it kind of like, the reason I liked door knocking it is because you could knock on the door, and if somebody said, how much is my house worth? I could, standing at the door, pretty much tell them, well, it's this model, and it's in this condition, therefore it's worth this price, kind of a thing. And I just knew the neighborhood, we knew the neighborhood so good. But here's what I would also notice, is because we knocked in that area for so long, because it was about a year that we were in that same neighborhood and never hitting the same door twice. There were times we would have knocked on a street, but then as we would drive to go to a different street, we'd go, off one of the main roads or whatever, and I'd see a sign pop up and I'd be like, I remember talking to that person. There's now a for sale sign in their yard, not mine, and it's somebody else's. And I would be like, I remember talking to them. And I remember them saying they were never moving, whatever it was that they had told me. Yet all of a sudden here it was 6, 9 months, a year later, there's a for sale sign in their yard. And what I've realized is sometimes us knocking on the door might plant the seed. No different than my friend asking me, so when are you going to move? And I said, never. Yet I can look back and see that is where the whole thing started. Because it was after that I was like, well, if I ever did, it would be. And so it kind of just goes to work in the subconscious. Well, that's what happens with this. Okay. So we good with all that? Okay. So hopefully you're tying this together. That is why when we're prospecting, I want to try to get an appointment, but if I can't, I want to capture people as a lead if I can. Because what I learned by that is I would see that happen over and over again. Is out in that neighborhood, Shirley and I would have knocked on the door and we would drive in and Shirley would see one and be like, oh, I talked to those people and this is what they told me. And so you want to capture people and stay in touch with them, because if they go through this process. So now you're going to have people along the way that you're going to drop or whatever, but just know if you like, there are a few things that I teach that I'm kind of like, yeah, this is good, but whatever. Like, get this burned into your mind in terms of your prospecting, because I'm telling you, this is what, especially when you have a lead that you've been following up with who has said, yes, we're interested, we might want to do it. And then all of a sudden they go cold. Rather than just throw them away, recognize it was no different than what happened with us. We went back in and was like, never mind, we don't, give us our $500 back. We're canceling that lot. We're going to move on. Yet 3 or 4 months later, we were right back in there again. So one of the things that you want to do with people who are in this future that you feel like are in here or here, something that I would add to your vocabulary when you're prospecting of lead follow-up, even up here in this new or now phase, is I work with my clients at their pace. You should say that over and over and over again when you're prospecting. When somebody gives you resistance, hey, no worries, I work with my clients at their pace. See that, and the reason I do that is, here's why. If you treat somebody here like they're here, which is what we do, they're going to be adverse to you. They want nothing to do with you. You're trying to sell me on doing something I don't want to do. So, but if you treated somebody in this phase like they're in this phase, they're okay with it. Meaning, if I run into somebody who's in this phase and I said, I work with my clients at their pace, and they go, oh, okay, good. Yeah, we're serious and we want to get going. We want to get something right away. Great. I'm going to work with you at that pace then. But if I say that to somebody back here, they're going to go, oh, well, that's fine. We're not planning on doing anything. If you want to waste your time staying in touch with me, you can. And I will gladly say, yep, I would be happy to do that. Now, here's the key though. So for me, here's what I learned. Let's talk door knocking. So if I had knocked on somebody's door, and in knocking on the door, I would go through the script that you guys heard me doing before. We got this home listed for sale and blah, blah, blah. And who do you know wants to move into the area? Nobody. Well, when do you plan on moving? I don't. Well, how long have you lived at this address? Well, where did you move from? How did you pick this area? All of that was always to set up for this question. If you ever were to move, where would you go next? I love that question because for me, it's designed around planting a seed. Now, if you go out in a garden and you plant seeds, does every seed take root? No. So no different with this. Like when you're prospecting, to me, asking the question of if you ever were to move, where would you go next, was to plant a seed to see if it could take some root. Now, here's the key thing though. If I said to Aiden, so when do you plan on moving? And he said no. And then I said, well, where did you move from? How did you happen to pick this area? And then I say, if you ever were to move next, where would you go next? And he says to me, no clue, no plans, not going anywhere. Okay, that's probably one. If I'm just outdoor knocking, I'm probably not gonna try to capture him as a lead. But if he said, but if I said, well, if you ever were to move, where'd you go next? And he said to me, well, we would want to move on the east side. Okay, well, when would that be? I don't know. We'd have to wait till we could afford it or something. That's gonna be one that I'm gonna go, okay, I want to capture that one to stay in touch with him, because if he's already got that kind of an idea in mind, there, he may be already percolating. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Any questions on that before we go to the next piece of this? I gotta not do such a good job of explaining. All right, next piece of this. So we're gonna now create two lists here. And these two lists, I'm gonna have you guys tell me, ideas of ways we could generate business, leads. Like what are some ways, avenues we could go out and prospect? And I'm gonna put them in one of two lists, and then we'll talk about the two lists. So, and actually we'll probably have kind of a third, but. So start just giving to me, and you guys on Zoom, I know I've been ignoring you, but if you want to unmute, you can share ideas too. What are some ways that we could get leads?
Estate sales.
Okay, but, okay, I'm on a team,
foreclosures.
but so what? That doesn't necessarily.
Your internet leads.
Okay, good. There we go. That's okay. So good. So internet leads.
Door knocking.
Okay, good. Internet leads. I'm gonna put door knocking over here.
Estate
So
sales.
Internet leads or pretty much calling on the phone. Is there some other like phone, like calling phone? thing?
Just cold calling. That's what I'd say. Well, we'll put it as just listed, just sold. How's that? So I'm gonna put JL/JS. So just listed. So anytime you list a property, one of the things that is a good idea is to call around the neighborhood and just, hey, we just listed the home, or go knock on doors. So, and under just listed, and then the same thing when a home sells, and this is fascinating too. But when a home sells in a neighborhood, it is not uncommon for two more to show up after that. So it's like, especially like I've noticed it in my own neighborhood. We'll go a long time with nobody selling. And then all of a sudden, one person puts their home on the market and it sells. And then all of a sudden, like two new listings pop up shortly thereafter. And especially in today's market, because people will be like, well, I mentioned to you guys about the one that I had just sold in North Salt Lake. The two neighbors next to them had told our sellers, if you guys get that price, like you're up in the night, if you get that price, we're selling our house too. Now, I don't know if they will or not, but I went and knocked on the door to let them know, hey, if you decide you want to sell, but that's the idea of just listed, just sold. Okay, so what else can we do?
Absentee owners.
Okay, good.
I don't know if he can hear us.
For Walmart.
I don't think it can.
And do what?
Hello.
Okay,
Maybe
good.
you
So
try to see the boost.
I'm gonna just
Yeah,
put that
He can't
as,
hear us.
let me think of how to call it, what to call that. I'm just gonna say, talk to people. How about that? And what I mean by that, when I say talk to people, is this. Ultimately, what I mean is when you are just doing whatever you have to do, when you go to lunch, you go to a grocery store, you go to a department store, you go to drop off your dry cleaning, like, I don't care what it is. When you go to do that kind of stuff, just talk to people. Like, for example, Chad Johnson, that you may or may not know who he is, but he has got a property that he's got under contract right now. He went to I don't know if it was T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon. He went to the cell phone store, and while he was there, he just started talking about real estate. And one of the people working there said, yeah, we've been thinking about selling our home. And he kind of chit-chatted with him a little bit and then left. And then it was like, why didn't I might not be telling this exactly right, but it's close enough. He went back though. So I don't remember what he had said the first time, but he realized I didn't do enough with it. So he went back again and was like, hey, I want to put together a market analysis for you. In fact, actually, here's what he said. I thought this was good. What he said to her when he went back is, my manager requires me to do 3 market analyses every month, which we don't, but he said that. And so could I do one on your house just so that you would know what your house is worth? And it would help me out because then my manager will know I did one of my 3 market analysis. And she goes, yeah, sure. So he went and did it. And then when he got there to do the market analysis, he said, yeah, we want to actually list. So let's get the home listed. So here's the point. Just when you're out doing what you do during the day, talk to people. Let me give you one other quick story on that is, and I'm getting ahead of myself. I should save it, but I'm not going to. So I used to do these trainings for a different company, and we would do, the office that we were at was right down here at 7200 South and State. And there's like a Christian bookstore there. You guys know what I'm talking about? No. How about Hooters? I always explain it that way when I would tell people where the office was. I'd be like, yeah, we're by the Christian bookstore. And people would be like, oh, I'm not sure where that is. And I'd be like, oh, it's by Hooters. Oh, yeah, I know right where that is. Yeah. So that's why I always started with, yeah, it's by the Christian bookstore, you know. Anyway, but so there was also a Subway down there. I don't think it's still there anymore, but on just off the corner there was, we had this big training office, and there were times that the trainings that I would do, I would have 80 people there at these trainings, and we would break for a lunch. And after we would stop for lunch, tons of agents would go over to this Subway. Well, one day in particular, and there was the same guy that worked at the Subway, like he was always there every lunch. One day somebody comes back and says, hey, I just picked up a really good lead during lunch. And I said, tell me about it. And he said, yeah, I just was over at the Subway and I just asked the guy. And he's like, yeah, I've actually been thinking about it for a few months. Like all of these agents would go and eat there every Monday, because we would do this training every Monday. Every Monday they would go and eat there and nobody would ever ask him. For months they could have picked this guy up, but finally one person did. So yeah, just talk to people when you're out doing what you do. And here's what I found worked for me. So remember I told you I was going to tell you how to do these. I was going to make the list first, but this one, for whatever reason, I'm telling you first. So here's what I would do. If I was at Subway now, for instance, let's say, as I'm paying for the food, or even while you're doing your order or something, what I would do is I always have business cards with me, and I would just say, Aiden, will you do me a favor?
Probably.
Well, see, and here's the thing. When they're serving you, they never say that.
Oh, yeah, like, oh, yeah, of course.
The answers, see, because they're in the mode of I'm at work and I got to be nice to the customer. They go, yeah, sure, what's up? And I would then take my card and I would hand it to them and say, would you hold on to my card? And if you hear of anybody thinking of buying or selling real estate anywhere, have them give me a call. And they'll always go, yeah, sure. But sometimes what they'll do is go, yeah, I've actually been thinking about it. Or they'll go, yeah, my brother's actually last night was talking about it. That's the ones you're looking for. Just know most of the time when you do that, they're going to go, yeah, sure. And would you hold on to my card? And if you hear of anybody thinking of buying or selling anywhere, have them give me a call. Yep, sure. And then you leave 9 times out of 10, that's going in the trash as soon as you walk out, just FYI. But I also had times where they would go, yeah, I'm actually thinking about it. So just when you're just out doing what you do, start talking to people and just have cards. Yeah.
Oh, I've
Perfect.
done that, like at T-Mobile, you were talking about T-Mobile, I've done that, and I added somebody from, it hasn't really gone anywhere, but, you know, like you said, just talking to people, and then at my physical therapist. I
Yep,
go 'cause of
perfect.
my neck, and so I just left some cards there.
Perfect.
Haven't heard anything, but you know, that's just one way that I am trying to expand a
Yep,
little bit more.
perfect,
and
yeah.
Let people know.
Yep. Just as you're out doing what you do, just talk to everybody you do, interact with that way. Just, hey, will you do me a favor? And they're going to say yes. Hold on to my business card. And if you hear of anybody thinking of buying or selling, and it's not that I really wanted them to have my card, because like I said, I know most of the time it's going in the trash. In fact, actually, I had somebody hand me a business card the other day, and there was a trash can right in front of me. No lie, I almost took it and dropped it straight into the trash
would've
can,
been
like right in
funny.
front of them. I know, I'm glad it would have been funny. I'm glad I didn't do it, but they're like, hey, here's my business card. And I seriously grabbed it, and like, I was putting my hand down about to just let it go in there. I was like, I probably better. Exactly. All right. But just talk to people. Okay, what else can we do? What are some other ways we could get business?
SOI.
Good. Now, I'm going to put this one in the middle. And we're going to do a whole class on that. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot on it, but it could go either direction. And I'll say more about that in a minute. What else can we do? Where else can we get deals from?
Social media.
Okay, good. What else?
Could you do a drive-by and see if there's a house that you find enticing to sell and then search the property records for it to see contact seller?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm gonna lump that here in door knocking, or actually we even could put cold calling. But essentially, yeah, if you found it, you're either gonna go research it and call them, or you're gonna go knock on their door. Good, love it. What else?
Flyers, I've seen flyers.
Okay, good. I'm gonna call that something different too. I'm gonna call it advertising. So, but flyers, I would say, yeah, if you just got a flyer and you go ahead and pass out flyers. So we can do advertising. Good. What else?
Are you lumping like for sale by owner and expired?
Nope. So for sale by owner and expired. Good. What else? There's not a whole lot left, but there's possibly a few.
Where would you fit like emails, just send emails to?
I put that, if you're just doing kind of a blast email marketing kind of a thing, I'd say that's advertising.
Russ, can you hear us?
What's that?
You could put an event on.
Okay, good. Yeah. I'm gonna call that networking.
Russ, can you hear
Now,
us?
again, depending on how you did it, if you do an event and you're doing it and inviting your SOI, that might be a little different, but networking is just like if you went to a party or something and you're just gonna chit chat with people about it. Okay, good.
What about like, I don't know if this is like referral, somebody that
Okay.
is moving from a different state into the area and maybe you know somebody.
Okay, so good. Yeah, I'll put that with SOI, but I love that. Yes, absolutely. All right, this one's actually a really good one. Is signs, meaning like when you list a property, there is not much better of an advertising that you could do than putting your sign that you're helping somebody sell their house out in front of
And
their house.
maybe in your car too, those little sticky.
You better be a good driver if you do that.
Yeah.
Don't ever cut anybody off. I never did that, but.
That's the only hesitation.
But,
I
but
had.
yeah, what I have found is that most of the time, the phone calls
Those
that
are
people
they.
get are, you cut me off, you jerk,
Yeah,
you know?
Like Brett Belknap is the forerunner.
Yeah, exactly. All right, there's probably a few others, but that's probably a good enough comprehensive list. So now here's the question for you. What does this list have in common? And what does this list have in common? And we're gonna talk about advantages and disadvantages to both. Because there are advantages and disadvantages to both.
So the left list is like you physically doing something.
Okay,
and
good.
the right is
I'm gonna call it active.
tools that you're using kind of.
Okay, that's gonna be active prospecting is what I would call it. Okay. So what is the other side then? Passive. So this side, you're actively like going after it. This side, you're kind of passively going after stuff, meaning like you're paying to get some leads or do some advertising on the internet, hoping that somebody then comes and signs up. Open house, you're hoping that somebody will come and show up at the open house. Social media, you're posting something, hoping that someone will respond. So this is all kind of you putting stuff out there, seeing who's gonna come as a result of it. This is saying, I'm gonna go out and find it. I'm gonna go get it myself, okay? Now, so what would be the advantages or disadvantages to both of those? Because they both have advantages and disadvantages.
Active's a lot of work.
Okay,
Passive isn't a lot of work.
okay, good. So yeah, this is gonna be a lot more work. This one is a little easier of just kind of this one, you're actively doing stuff. This year, you're just kind of sitting back and waiting for somebody to respond. Okay, good.
So interactive, like you're actually talking to somebody, like on the active, kind of sometimes face to face, or communicating with somebody, as opposed to the passive. You're just kind of hoping that somebody will.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, here's the advantage to this though. The advantage to this side though is when somebody does come, based on what you just learned over here, what does that mean?
Second half of that. scale.
Yeah, and they may even still be in percolation on, like I said, when I first walked into that model home, I believe I really wasn't thinking I was gonna do anything, so I don't even think I was in information. I mean, I probably was, I guess, because the fact that I wanted to go in and look at it is information gathering, I guess. But yeah, so I would say they're at least, into here on this. So that's the advantage of some of these. So it's a disadvantage because here's what I know. Let me say it to you this way. We did a study, I'm gonna tell you about 2 different studies, but I'm gonna keep them kind of short because I want to get to some other stuff, but on open houses. The people who show up in an open house, 82% of those people will do something real estate related within a 1-year period. So 8 out of 10 will either buy or sell real estate within a 1-year period. Yet, here's the problem. Most people think that the doing an open house is a waste of time. And it is for most people the way they do it, by the way. It is a waste of time. But if you understand this, and you understand that the people who show up there, the reason they're showing up there is because they're probably in the early stages of information gathering, but which also means they're still probably 6 to 9 months out. But because people are so focused on this now business, somebody shows up to an open house and they're not ready to buy, and they say they're in looky-loo, nosy neighbor. What ends up happening is the agent goes meh and moves on, doesn't keep their information, doesn't stay in touch with them. And then, like I said, they end up going something real estate related, but they use somebody else. Now, part of what goes on here in information gathering is they're not just gathering information about a house, they're gathering information about what type of an agent they want to use too. So as they're interacting with you, they're making a decision they would want to work with you or they wouldn't want to during this, FYI. So internet leads. I think it's the same concept as the open house, the 82%. The difference is they're further out. Meaning, here's what I would say is almost, I would say an internet lead instead of 6 to 9 is probably more like on average 9 to 12 months out.
Says it's easy.
That's right.
For open house, you have to get dressed and go and schedule when you get to open house.
And they know they're gonna have to talk to somebody. Versus the internet, they think they can go on and do it without having to talk to you, right? All right. So same kind of a thing here, the sign calls. Here's the other thing I will tell you. I had somebody ask me the other day, before there were internet leads, what kind of other things did agents do? And I will tell you, this was a huge source of my business. I did a ton of business off of this. And here's what would happen is either I had a listing and when somebody would call me, I just knew they're 8 out of 10 are going to do something because it's the same people that would show up in an open house, by the way. Same with the internet. These are the same people. They're just doing it earlier on. Now, we would back before internet time, we would put a sign writer on the properties that had an 800 number that people could call and it would tell them this home features 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, blah, blah, blah. Well, because of the caller ID, it would capture, and calling an 800 number, it would capture their phone number. Well, what I did is I learned pretty quickly this concept. And so what I did is I would call those people off of the sign and set an appointment because I knew that 8 out of 10 were going to do something real estate related. Well, most of the other agents in the office didn't. So for us, it was called fact line. So I would walk around to the agents in the office and I'd say, hey, Joan, are you going to call your fact line list? And most agents would say no. Or they would say, yeah, I'm going to call them at least once. And I would then, because I understood this, I would say, well, when you're done with it, or if you're not going to call it, can I have it? And they'd go, yeah, sure, here. And I would call. And because I understood this, I was like, I did a ton of business off of signs because of people calling off that. Now, the internet changed that a bit because, like I say, people quit. You're not going to call in if you can jump on that way. All right. Now, so with that, that's the advantage to this. The people who show up are what I call hand raisers. So the downside to this is you can't control who's going to show up. Like you might go to an open house and not one person shows up. That's where you're like, yeah, I wasted that time. But if they show up and you get an appointment with them, to me, it wasn't a waste of time. Now, so the advantage is the people are hand raisers who show up. The disadvantage is You don't know who's gonna show up and you may be sitting around a lot. This side, the advantage is you're going to them, you have a little bit more control. You're not just sitting around waiting, you're being actively going to do it. The downside specifically to these two, and it's not necessarily a downside, but you need to be aware of it, is you're competing with some pretty fierce agents who have been in the business for a while in terms of for sale by owners and expireds, meaning your skills have to be really good, and you're gonna have to ask for a for sale by owner expired for you to get an appointment. Let me just make sure, and I'm not saying don't do these, do it. But just know, for you to set appointments with those people, you're probably gonna have to ask 5 times. You're gonna get told no 4 times before they finally say, yes, you could come and meet with me on these. So that's what I mean by, it's a little bit, you gotta be a little bit more, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but maybe it is, to getting an appointment with the people in this group. So that's the good news, but it's meaning that, you know, you're actively going and doing it, and these people are ready to do something real estate related as well. But you're also gonna have to be willing to keep asking to push through the no's, okay? All right, let me do next piece with this. So let me pull the screen down. Let's turn it on. Is that really true? They're saying the mic isn't on. Is it really not on? Can you guys on Zoom? not-
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Alex, can you hear me? Someone? Bueller? Hello? Oh, so
Hello?
I can hear you, but I can't hear you guys. That's interesting. Wonder why that is. Hang on, let me see here. Try it now. Somebody talk.
Hello? Hello?
Ah, now I got you.
There we go.
All right, sorry. Were you guys trying to talk to me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Well, I was gonna add absentee owners. I was gonna add farming, a neighborhood. I was gonna add people that own rentals, landlords, foreclosures, estate sales. But anyway,
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. All right, well, I apologize that you guys, I'm glad to know you could hear me, but
yeah, we could hear you. So
I couldn't hear you. So,
thanks for fixing it.
yeah, you're welcome. Okay. So here's the next piece of it. So here's what I'm gonna show you guys now is, I wanna go through and talk about some of those things. So now I had mentioned to you guys, do you guys want this? Is this better for you guys to see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's better, okay. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. So I mentioned to you that I was gonna show you this survey that is done by NAR. So every year, NAR will do a survey of home buyers and sellers. They start it in July. So for the 2021, they're gonna start it next month. They'll start to work on this. They send it out to people who have bought in the past year. So from July of 2020 to June of 2021, they're gonna then send out surveys to try to get them to fill out these surveys. And they'll work on trying to get those surveys back from July. Well, they send them out and they work on getting it back between July and basically the end of September. From September till the end of October, basically, they compile all the data. They release this then in November. So this comes out every November. Now, we're looking at the 2018 version right now of this particular chart. I'm going to show you the 2020 here in the next page, but it's in a different format, and I just like this format better. So I want you to kind of see what it looks like so you can see it. This is showing for sale by owners. So people who listed their home and sold it as for sale by owner versus comparing it to the people who used only an agent to sell their home. Okay, so this top line, this green one, is they only used a real estate agent, or they used a real estate agent to sell their home. Now, you'll notice on here that it kind of, you know, up and down a bit, but then is kind of somewhat slightly trended up through 2018. Look at what the blue line is, the for sale by owners. So look at what's happened with for sale by owners. What this is telling you is, like back here in 1985, 1 out of every 5 homes that sold was a for sale by owner in 1985, which that's kind of interesting to see, because as agents, we have this belief that for sale by owners, you'll never get your home sold. But 1 out of 5 in 1985 did sell it on their own. Now you'll notice again, what's happened here is slightly declined down. And if we go back to like 2003 is kind of the time where you can see it flattened out, but it's just slowly declined. And I remember about in 2003, that's kind of when commercials on TV started having the website for the business and stuff. And I remember, in fact, I even remember sitting watching a football game, and one came on, and I was telling my father-in-law, hey, you see that where it says cope.com or whatever it was? I said, do you see that? That's like a website that you can get on the internet and go there, and and he was like, wow, that's amazing. But I remember during that time, people saying travel agents and real estate agents are going to go away because of the internet. And I remember being a little panicked. Now, I already told you before that I have in the cul-de-sac that I live in 2 doctors, and I talked to one of the doctors because I remembered them advertising on TV WebMD. Have you guys ever been to WebMD to look at to see if what's wrong with you?
Don't do it.
Yeah, good. No, that's exactly right. Why? Why do you say don't do it?
Because it makes you think you're dying.
That's right. So here's what happened is I remember WebMD, and I remember going to one of those doctors that lived in my cul-de-sac, and I said, his name's Chris. And I said, hey, Chris, are you worried? Because like with the internet, like people aren't even going to need to come to the doctor anymore. You can just go online and research it. And he said exactly what you said. He goes, no, we love it. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, people go on there and they start researching and they think they're got this rare disease now that they're going to die. And so he said, we're seeing more people come too. And now, but what has it done to travel agents?
I mean, no one really, you can book your own.
Yeah, I mean, there still are travel agents, but
Yeah.
not like,
No.
like I remember it used to be like, if you were going to go do some trip like that, yeah, you would go call up and be like, hey, we want to go here and this is what we want to do. They'd go do all the research for you. Well, they kind of have gone away. And to some extent, I was a little worried, honestly, of like, it's going to replace real estate agents. They're not going to need us anymore. But interesting, look at, like you would think with the invention of the internet and with people being able to go to a Zillow or a forsalebyowner.com and put your home on there, why would people need us anymore? Yet, look at what's happened. The number of people selling their home for sale by owner has slowly decreased. Now, why? Why'd that be?
Implementation of all these new laws after 2008, 2009, and it's harder and more complicated.
Okay, and I would say it's the same thing that Denise said. To some extent, they get on there and start researching selling your own home and kind of go, forget it. Like there's too much paperwork. I don't know how to do it. And so anyway, so I just want you to see that one first. Okay, next. So this is the 2020 version. This is the same information you just saw, but in a different format. You can see why I still kept the 2018. But if we just look at from 2009, so go to 19 and 20, 19 stayed at 7%, and then 20 ticked back up to 8% of doing it for sale by owner. I'll be curious to see what 2021 looks like because I don't know. Is it going to go up to 9? Is it going to stay at 8? Is it be 7? I don't know, but it'll float around in there. So anyway, just the reason I bring that up to you guys is 2 things. It might feel like for a minute here that I'm like trying to tell you guys don't work for sale by owners because they can sell on their own, but that's not what I'm telling you. What I really want you to see is this next chart. I just want you to see that they can sell on their own and they do sell on their own. Just know that that happens. What they don't understand is this. So this is the chart that NAR puts out, and this is, again, for 2020, showing people who sold their home for sale by owner versus the ones who did it agent assisted. Now you'll notice here, if we look at this median selling price line right here, that's what we're going to look at for a minute. You'll notice the median selling price. Now let me explain the difference between median and average because sometimes people don't fully understand it. Average would be saying, let's say that Drake over here made $100 million last year, okay? And that I made $10,000. Okay, the rest of you guys were about between $100,000 and $150,000 a year. If we were to say, what is our average income? We would take his 100 million, my 10,000, you guys' 100,000-ish, so there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us here. We would add all that up and divide it by 8. And if he made 100 million, just ballparking, like what's it gonna say our average income is?
400,000 probably somewhere.
Probably higher than
Higher
that,
than
Higher than
that.
a little.
probably a couple $1 million a year. But is that realistic? Like, is our average income that?
No.
No. So the reason you use median here is median will get rid of the outliers. See, if we looked at our median income, we're gonna say, okay, there's 8 of us in here. And we're gonna say he made it 100 million, I made 10,000. The rest of you guys are between 100 and 150. What median's gonna do is go, okay, where's the middle? So let's say one of you made 130,000 and let's say it was Caitlin, we would go, okay, there's our median. So our median income would be 130,000. Is that more accurate to what our income would be and under the scenario? Does that make sense? So that's why we use median here instead of average. Because if somebody sold their home for sale by owner and it was and which probably isn't gonna necessarily happen, but $100 million home, like that's gonna skew things a bit. So using median gets rid of the outliers and kind of gets you closer to like, here's kind of what's real, okay? So the median sales price of all sellers was 242,000. Okay, great. All for sale by owners was 217,900. If this for sale by owner knew the buyer, their median price was 176. If they didn't know them, it was 255. Now, hopefully that makes sense. Like if you know somebody and you're selling them, like for me, it's typically going to be like I'm buying my grandma's house. Grandma's probably going to sell it to me for pretty cheap. That's the idea of why they knew the buyer is so low compared to if they didn't know the buyer. So for me, if we're going to talk about should somebody sell their home for sale by owner, clearly we don't want to include that they knew the buyer, which this includes they knew the buyer, and so you can see it's dragging it down. So let's not use that. Let's just say somebody who legitimately is like, I don't have somebody I know I'm going to sell it to. I want to try to sell it for sale by owner. Now, why do they want to sell it for sale by owner?
No commission.
Because they're going to save the commission. So the reason they're doing it is to save 6%, right? Now, so let's jump over here to agent assisted only, or just agent assisted. And agent assisted only is the same, so it doesn't matter. But if we jump over to agent assisted, look at what the median sales price is. 295 versus 255. Now, what, just ballparking, what is the difference percentage wise of that? What percent?
$40,000.
So 40,000 on a $300,000 home.
Like 25%,
How much?
like 25 roughly.
I think it's
That
gonna be,
seems high.
if we were, so, sorry, let's look at it this way of. Basically, let's look at the 40,000 on a 300,000. So on a 300,000, 10% would be 30,000.
So about 12.
So about 12%-ish, let's just say, okay? So if we said, so let me make sure I get this straight. They're gonna sell their home for sale by owner to save 6%, but it's gonna cost them 12%.
Yeah.
Like this is the main thing I want you guys to see. So I'm not saying don't work for sale by owners. Instead, what I'm saying is you need to truly understand and believe that according to the empirical data, this is the real data of NAR, a for sale by owner, if you average it out, gets about 12% less than they could have if they would have used an agent. So they want to save 6%. Now, I don't know if this is true, what I'm about to say. I don't have any data to back this up. But part of why I wonder if it's, and it consistently is in that 12% range year after year. And it kind of makes me wonder a little bit is who would, so actually, let me, without telling you, I'm going to guide you there. So if a person puts their home for sale by owner to save the commission, to save 6%, how much does it cost a buyer to use an agent? Well, but typically, how much do they pay the buyer's agent?
3%.
But does the buyer pay it?
No, the seller has to pay it.
Okay, so if it doesn't cost a buyer to use an agent, why would a buyer not use an agent? Okay, so good. So they're not informed, or because there are some that the reason they they think it's gonna cost them, so they go, I'll go straight to the seller. Why else though would somebody else do it for sale?
Buyer.
Why would why would a buyer not use an agent?
Maybe they're an agent.
And okay, good. So sorry, I apologize. I didn't explain that right. Why would somebody go buy a for sale by owner without it? That's probably the way I should have said it.
I think this all goes back to just they don't really know what's going on.
Okay, or they really know what's going on, which is,
See.
They can try and get it cheaper.
and I don't know if that's the reason this is, like, if the seller's thinking I'm gonna save the commission, therefore I could come off on my price a little bit. The buyer's showing up saying you didn't have to pay a commission, therefore I want to pay less. See, for me, typically the people going and buying a first-time home buyer is typically not going to go without an agent and buy a for sale by owner because they don't know what they're doing. And they aren't going to know if the agent's not helping them. So I don't know if that's why this ends up being around 12%. But here's the other piece on this, and then we'll move on. I actually one night couldn't sleep. This was years ago. And I just flipping through the channels and I come across an infomercial about buying real estate. And I'm an agent at the time, so I'm like, I'm curious to see what this has to say. So they're talking about buying properties. And one of this actually like blew me away. And I was like, there is no way this really happens. But here was an infomercial doing it, so it must. What they were recommending that you do is that you go find a for sale by owner, offer them whatever price they were asking for the home. I mean, they did say, if you can negotiate it down, fine, but if you can't, don't worry about it. Just offer them what they're asking. Then what they were then gonna do is, if you bought the programs, they were gonna then teach you how to nickel and dime the seller, basically, after you had gotten an agreed upon price, about how through inspections and appraisal, how to then go back and get them. And essentially what they said was this: if you can get a for sale by owner to agree to your contract, they're gonna now start making plans to buying another house or doing whatever it is. And when you come back later on, right before closing, this is what they were teaching these people to do to a for sale by owner, is you come back right before closing and say, we can't do the deal unless, and then get them to way come down on price. See,
Pretty much be an agent almost, but a little more
Well.
sleazy.
way sleazy, yeah.
More manipulative.
So here's the thing is, unfortunately, like, the reason I think some of this happens is that neither the buyer nor the seller knows, or the seller typically doesn't really know, but the buyer does. I don't know. Here's the thing. My wife one day said to me, we were talking about for sale by owner, she goes, well, if you weren't an agent and we were gonna sell our house, I would try it for sale by owner. And I was like, what? I would never do that. And part of it for me is because I understand now, truth is, like, I know enough about it now, it'd probably be fine. But most people don't know enough of all the contracts you gotta do and this and that. And unfortunately, that does happen, is people who are experienced buyers know they could come back to a seller at the last minute and be like, hey, we're not gonna be able to do the deal. And now the seller's feeling like, well, I gotta close on my other house. So anyway, just some interesting info there. All right, I'm probably spending too much time on this. The next two are really important though. This one is showing the method used that a seller used to find their real estate agent. How did you choose? So one of the questions they asked them is, how did you choose your real estate agent? What stands out to you when you look at this chart?
Referrals,
What about it?
a friend of a friend, or,
But what about it?
well, they trust their friends or their neighbors.
Yeah, and
Judgment.
41%, like overwhelmingly, the way people choose who they're gonna list with. Now, remember on the business planning class that we did last week, I told you guys, you have to work your sphere of influence. Remember you saying that? This is why. The reason I am so adamant, and in fact, in a few weeks, we're gonna do the SOI class. Like, you gotta work your sphere of influence, because 41% of the time, that's how they're gonna choose their agent, is either referred by or they are a friend, neighbor, or relative. Well, what's the second best way to get a listing?
Previously.
Which for me, in my book, that's SOI still. So you add those two together, you're at a 67%. 2/3 of the time, the way people are gonna choose their agent is because they know 'em, or referred by them or used them in the past. So don't call anybody you know and talk to them about real estate. That's what this says, right? Don't ever call anybody you know and ask them for referrals.
That's the third one down though, so
What about it?
like the internet lead.
Actually, the
That's
third
only
best
5%.
is other,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
I just wish I knew what it was, because it's
Yeah.
the third best, but
Super vague.
yeah, I don't know what it is. But yeah, so, but now here's the thing. Notice that after that, remember I said to you guys in the business planning class that you need to work your SOI, and then outside of that, choose 1 or 2 other ways you're gonna do it. And I said, it doesn't really matter what it is, that this is why. Because you can see 5, 4, 3, like the way that people choose drops off dramatically who they're gonna list their home worth. And so it really doesn't matter too much which route you're gonna choose to go outside of your sphere of influence. But here's what I will tell you. Choose 1 or 2 other ones besides these, lumping these together as SOI. Outside of that, choose 1 or 2 of the others and stick with it. The problem that most agents have, remember I started this whole class by just saying, if you're not doing prospecting yet, and you're a new agent, get doing it. Pick something and do it. Just start. See, for me, I don't care what, choose something. But the problem what most agents do is this, is they go, okay, well, let's see. Internet website was then like the 4th best way to get listings. So I think I'll do that. And then they go do it. And then they go, oh man, this is a lot of money. And these leads are crap. That's the other one you hear all the time. These leads are crap. So they go, maybe I ought to just do personal contact then. So now I'm going to go out and start knocking on doors, or I'm going to get on the phone. Well, then you find out, well, yeah, I got all these people who said they might later, but that's not working. So, maybe I ought to try an open house, because 3% chose their agent because they met him in an open house. So I'll go do an open house. So they go do an open house and then they don't get anything and they go, maybe I ought to try some direct mail. I'll do that. I'm going to go spend money on and notice what's happening as you get down there. Make sure that for sure you go do a whole bunch of advertising, buy calendars and magnets and stuff. No. I mean, if you're going to do it as part of your SOI, but here's the thing. If you want to give your SOI a calendar, that's fine. I'm good with that. But you got to be staying in touch with them. If all you ever do is send them a calendar and you think they're going to list with you, I've listed a lot of houses with other agents' calendars hanging on the wall. Okay, so just know that's it. Okay, so what about buyers? Let's take a look at the buyer side. What do you notice on the buyer side?
Same thing. Friend referral.
That's right. 40% is referred buyer as a friend, neighbor, or relative. 13% use the agent. So 53% of the time, it's about that. That's why I am so adamant. If you got to work your SOI, guys, you got to have that. If you're not calling people from your SOI, you got to start calling every person in your phone. Talk and just, hey, I'm in real estate. I learned today the very best way to get business is by referral. If you know of anybody, please let me know. And then notice the third best on that is other again. And then after that, it just drops off to where it doesn't really matter. Just choose but stick with it. Don't give up. If you're going to door knock, keep door knocking. Don't give up. You'll fine tune it and you'll get it to work for you. But the problem is agents bounce all over the place from one to the next and they never get good at any of them. Go ahead, Aiden.
First time home buyers on this is it's 2%. Is that just like someone who sold their home for the first time? And so it's
I'm glad you brought that up. I don't understand how a first-time home buyer could have used the agent previously.
Yeah, it's like maybe inherited a house, maybe. And
But even then, how would you?
would
I guess that's true. I guess you could have maybe inherited the house and you were. No, because you still would. You still had
I
to.
think they lied about that.
I think they misunderstood. Well, here's what I think it is. They're a first-time home buyer, but what they're saying is, well, my family always uses this agent, is my guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Denise.
I was just gonna say, I think it also speaks to how important your your personality, your reputation is,
Uh-huh.
among your friends or your community even, because
those numbers are pretty staggering where it could really impact your business and your entire future if you have a bad transaction or you have, beef with people or, you know what I mean? Just like any sort of contention could really prevent you from moving forward.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we've talked about just talking to people. I've done. And reason I'm stating what I'm stating, if you have questions on these, we'll talk more about it, but on Tuesday, I went through and was kind of showing you the door knocking and about how to approach that and those type of things. We talked about internet. Well, have we talked about that? I would say when I put up there to connect, create value, close, like I kind of feel like we've covered a bit about that. Open houses. Here's what I'll tell you on terms of open house. So in terms of an open house, can be a really rich source. In fact, here's what I would tell you. As much as I don't like doing them, meaning like I just don't want to go through all the work and stuff. If I were to go to a brand new market, if I just picked up and moved to Florida and said, I'm going to be a real estate agent, I would probably start by, I would do open houses because of understanding this 82%. Now, the challenge we have in today's market though, is there's not, what seller really wants open houses today? Because you're going to probably have it sold before you can even do it to some extent. But because I understand that 82% of the people showing up are going to do that. Now, here's the secret though. Agents who typically do open houses, well, you will hear people say it's a waste of time. And it is a waste of time for the seller, by the way. Like very rarely does an open house sell the house. Like it's probably less, and I don't know, I don't have a real percentage, but I'll bet less than 10% of the time does it sell the house. So from a seller's perspective, it really is a waste of their time to do an open house because it's very unlikely the house will sell as a result of the open house. But from an agent's perspective, it's a great seller binky. Like what do you use a binky with a baby for? Yeah, to pacify. So guess what most agents do an open house for? It's a seller binky. We do it to pacify the seller. We do it to have them not cry that how come my house isn't sold kind of a thing.
Russ, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
So I was the open house queen when I first got into real estate. I did 5 open houses a weekend, 1 on Friday, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. There's a certain way that you absolutely have to do them. And I started closing like crazy. But when I would call people back, they'd say that they'd gone through many open houses. I was the only agent to get back with them.
Yep.
I wouldn't let them come in the house unless they put down the information because I told them for security purposes, the seller has asked you to put down your information. Then I would write down someone's information and they inevitably would follow that format.
Yep.
Then when you turn the page, they'd only put their name and they wouldn't put anything else. And I had to re-put down a person's name. I mean, there's a technique.
Yep.
But I will say after so many years of doing that, I only sold 1 off the open house, but I did get a lot of business and it was only the follow-up that got the business.
Perfect. Yeah, that's right. So that's what I was saying. From a seller's perspective, if you're doing it to sell the house, it's a waste of time. But if for you as an agent, it can be a great way to pick up business. But the key thing, which is what Rebecca said there, is you got to make them sign in. And then the other thing that you have to do is you have to be asking for appointment. You have to constantly be closing for an appointment. So same thing of that 3 to 5 times. And I probably shouldn't have erased it. You got to remember, most of the people showing up are in percolation or information gathering, and you got to stay in touch with you if you're.
Yeah, and I will say that, I mean, I did sell another one, but they already had an agent that they did buy the house that they walked in, but there was only one that I sold that became my client. And so anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because it's a good way to get started if you do it a certain way, but I don't think it would be in today's market.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard in today's market just because it's hard to find the properties. Okay, next. So for sale by owner, the biggest thing I wanted you guys to see from that was the chart that I showed you there. In terms of for sale by owners, you're gonna have to be pretty aggressive on closing for them to get the appointment to go. And then what you want to do is be able to go out and show them that they will be able to sell the home and be better off using you. See, that's kind of your biggest issue there. All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about, and then if you guys have other questions, we'll go through them. But as I wanted to give you an idea of a way to approach expired. So to some extent, when I said to you, if I went to a different market, I would start doing open houses. The other thing I would do for listings, because typically you're going to find buyers off of open houses and the internet. If you want to find listings, typically for sale by owners and expireds is the way to go. Now, here's what I would recommend to do in terms of your expireds and even actually for sale by owners for that matter, is this. Identify for you an area that you want to work in. So pick an area that is either close to your home, close to your office, or just an area that you want to work in. Just pick an area that, hey, I want to get listings in this area, okay? Then what you want to do is you're going to go on the MLS and you're going to do a search in that area. Now, sometimes people will ask me, well, how big of an area should I do? And it's going to vary depending on area. So I can't tell you exactly how, but here's what I will tell you. You will figure out really fast if it's too big or not big enough. So you'll figure out based on the area you're wanting to work in, if you'll do what I'm going to tell you, you'll figure out intuitively if you need to make it bigger or shrink it. Okay, so here's what it's going to look like. I'm going to pick an area. So you could start with a whole city if you wanted to. I mean, you could even do 2 cities if you like I said, just doesn't matter. Pick an area. You decide a neighborhood, although a neighborhood, you'll find out really fast, I need to go bigger. But pick an area that is maybe a city. And again, it's even hard to say a city, because if I think about this in terms of even like a West Jordan, I'm like, West Jordan itself might be too big to do this in. So you'll just have to decide, but intuitively you'll figure it out. So don't worry about that. Pick an area. Once you've picked the area, then what you're going to do is I'm going to go do a search in that area, and I'm going to look for homes that have expired in the last year. So I'm going to go 1 year back to find every home that has expired within that area. Now, again, like I said, because of what the market's been doing, there are still expired listings. There's just not as many. So you might need to start this as a bigger area. And then over time, as we get more inventory and homes start expiring again, you may shrink it up. But you're going to look for expireds in that area from the last year. Then what you want to do is go on each of those properties when it comes up, click on the history on the MLS, click on the history link. And you want to look to make sure that the last thing that's happened on that property is that it's expired. Because it's possible that you do that search and there's an expired, but then after it expired, it went back on the market and is now sold. So if the very last thing on the history, the most recent date on there is sold, then forget that property. Don't go do this. You want to see the ones that still are showing that it expired and never came back on the market. Following me? Okay. Now that I've done that, I'm going to see how many properties I come up with here. And we'll just do like 3 for now. But what I'm going to do then is I'm going to say, okay, now I'm going to go out and knock on the doors of those properties, however many you've come up with. Okay, maybe, and you might have 10 or 15 or even 20. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like I said, if you get too many, just start working it, and intuitively you're going to figure out this is too many and I don't want to do this many, or you're going to go, it's not enough, I need to get more. So, all right. Then I'm going to go to that house. I'll just pick the first one. Now, the reason I say you want to do it close to your home, close to the office, or just choose an area that you want to go to, is the idea behind it is if it's too far away and it's too big of an area, you're going to feel like I'm not doing anything but driving from house to house. And that's when you know it's too big. So what you're going to do though is I'm going to drive up to this first house. I'm going to go knock on the door. They're probably not going to answer the door and not be home. Like, just most of the time, that's what I found happens, is I go knock and nobody comes to the door. Now, actually, with COVID having hit and a lot of people working at home, you might get more at home now, but I'm going to go knock on the door. In the event they open the door, then I'm going to talk to them. And here's what it's going to look like. So Drake, will you be able to expire?
Yes,
I will. Absolutely. I knock on the door. He opens the door. Hi, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. I'm sure you've noticed by now that your home came up on the computer as an expired listing. Now, let me pause. Why would I say I'm sure you're aware by now your home came up on the computer as an expired listing?
Because other agents probably.
Yeah, more than likely, many agents have already called. Now, so tie this back to what we talked about on Tuesday. With expireds, you're probably gonna have to use a whole bunch of empathy with them because they're typically gonna be pretty frustrated. Now, let me back up. If his home expired a year ago, he's not frustrated. But if it expired yesterday or the day before, he's frustrated because of how many agents are calling. But a year later, probably not, okay? So I knock on the door, depending on if it's been a year or if it was only a couple days ago. We're gonna do the assuming that it just happened. So I knock on the door. I'm sure you're aware your home came up on the computer as an expired listing.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you've probably gotten hundreds of phone calls, or at least it's felt like that.
Yeah, it's kind of getting a little bothersome.
Okay, so let me pause again here. Here's the good news of going and knocking on the door though. Is it's getting harder and harder to find people's phone numbers. So they may not have had a ton of phone calls either. So I may say it as, I'm guessing you've gotten a ton of phone calls. And if he says, yes, I did, then I'm gonna go, man, it's gotta be frustrating, right? I'm gonna kick into the empathy. If he goes, no, not really, I'm gonna go, oh, well, you're lucky then. Because most expireds get a ton of phone calls. So I just was wanting to find out, had you sold this home, where would you go next?
Probably Salt Lake City.
So downtown,
Yeah.
okay. And so how soon did you need to be there?
I was thinking about a year or two.
Okay, so why am I asking, one, where, if you had sold your home, where were you going? And two, how soon did you need to be there? Why do I want to know
We're planting the seed for one. I think it just gives you more information to look for like another house for him if you do.
that? Okay,
I'm assuming you're going with, hey, I actually have a house.
so no, actually I'm not. That's not a bad idea, but where I'm at with this is I'm more wanting to find out, does he still need to sell? Because if I said, where were you moving to? And he said, Florida, and I said, well, how soon did you need to be there? And he's like, I got a job there and I'm working there already. This is somebody who's got to sell versus if I'm gonna move downtown and we're in Cottonwood Heights right now, and he's gonna move downtown. And how soon do you need to be there? Oh, a year or two. What's he telling me? There's not a ton of motivation there, but which I'm just wanting to find, because if there's motivation, I want to get this listing. If it's so then I'm going to click into, well, so what do you think kept your home from selling?
Price.
Yeah, they never say that, by the way, but they're going to blame the agent. It's the agent's fault. The price wasn't the problem. So typically they're gonna be agent or whatever, they're gonna tell you something. But if he said price, I'm like, oh, okay, great. So how did you determine that price?
Just a house that sold over there for like 700,000.
So you saw that one and figured yours is better, so you figured you could get 9.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what usually happens, right? So ultimately, I'm just gonna be trying to ask questions to find out, and then I'm gonna say, well, so what is your plan for the future as far as, are you still wanting to get the home sold?
Yeah, I'd like to.
You'd like
Probably
to.
the next year or so, yeah.
Okay, so if you could get it sold right away, would you want to?
Yeah, sure, why not? If I can
Okay,
get that
see,
price.
so then now I'm gonna wanna pursue that. So that, ultimately, you're knocking on the door to find out, do they still wanna sell? What was their motivation? Does it still exist? Can you get the listing? Does that make sense? In the event though, he's not home, because that's gonna happen more times than they are home. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna knock on 3 to 5 doors this way, cross the street, come back and do 3 to 5 doors this way, so 6 to 10 here. Okay, now let me show you what that looks like. So let's say I go to Drake and he's not home. So now I come over to his next door neighbor. Hello. Hi, my name's Russ. I'm with Century 21. I actually was not trying to get a hold of you. I wanted to get hold of your neighbor. They had their home for sale, and then depending, if it just came down, I would say that. If it was 3 months ago, I'm gonna say, he had his home for sale like 3 months ago and it didn't sell. I'm working with a lot of buyers in the area. Do you know if they still want to sell their home?
I don't really know. I don't talk to them very much.
You're not a good neighbor then, I guess. I'm just kidding. So, but here's what I'm gonna do, is ultimately what I'm gonna ask the neighbor, hey, I've got or you could say we've got buyers that are looking in this area, which I guarantee you within our company, we have somebody looking in that area. We've got buyers looking in this area. Do you know if he's still wanting to sell the home? Now, here's what I found. You're gonna come across some neighbors that are like that. I don't know, we don't really talk. More times than not, you're gonna come across somebody, oh, yeah, no, they still want to sell, or like, here's what I found. If when I knock on Drake's door, he may or may not tell me the truth, but I found a neighbor usually will tell you the truth. If they know, they'll, oh yeah, they were pretty frustrated with their agent and they still need to sell, but he decided he was gonna pull it off and do new carpet, or like, they'll tell you the truth of what's going on, a lot of times the neighbor. Now, here's the other thing that I wanna know. So, and usually I'll say this first, so sorry I did. But usually I'll knock on the door and say, hey, I was trying to get a hold of your neighbor, they're not home, we have buyers for the area, they have their home on the market. And I just was wanting to see if they're still interested in selling their home. When is the best time for me to catch them at home?
Do you want to give you like the, oh yeah, or,
Whatever, I don't care, tell me something.
I mean, I think he's normally home later in the days, but I don't really know how to schedule anything.
Okay, so you don't know, but typically it's, you would normally guess you see them later in the day.
Maybe like 6:30.
So here's the other thing that I'm doing is, so I from the neighbor, I want to find out two things. One, if they know if there's motivation, like why, do you know why they didn't sell, why they took it off the market? If the neighbor says, well, he had a job transfer, but then with COVID, it fell through. And so his company just said they're not moving again. Okay, well, for me, I might be like, okay, we're kind of coming out of COVID, maybe they're gonna move him again now, or it might be he lost his job, in which case, well, then I might still want to talk to him. Or it might be, yeah, he was gonna get a job transfer, they couldn't get their home sold, so he quit and got a new job and now he's staying. Okay, well, that's probably less. So I'm wanting to know motivation, and number two, I'm wanting to know when's the best time to catch him at home, okay? So now, in the event that doesn't work, then I'm gonna say, well, how about you? When do you plan on moving? So I'm gonna then kick into, well, how long have you lived at this address and where did you move from? If you ever were to move, where would you go next? And then, once I'm done, I'm gonna go next door.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Russ. I'm a Century 21. I was actually trying to get a hold of your neighbor two doors down, Drake. He had his home for sale by a few months ago, whatever. We've got a number of buyers looking in the area. Do you know if he's still wanting to sell his house?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I haven't really talked to him.
Man, there's gotta be better neighbors around there. No. So, but I'm gonna just, okay, I'm asking the question. Okay, well, do you know when the best time to catch them at home is? Do you happen to know when you typically see them around?
Typically anytime after 7 PM.
Okay, so that's what I'm looking for is, now, so part of, keep in mind, this is what I'm trying to find out. Is there motivation? Do the neighbors know the motivation? And when's the best time to go back? Because part of what I'm trying to decide is, do I want to keep going back or not? Like, if it's a house I feel like I want, then I'm gonna keep working on it. If it's not, then I may move on. I know, sorry, I'm being very long-winded today. Remember I said Tuesday I wasn't excited to be with you guys? Apparently I've been excited today, which that probably sounded bad for you. Were you online Tuesday?
Yeah, I was in here Tuesday.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I wasn't rude, was I?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
I was using it as an example.
Probably stewing about it, so.
I have felt bad. I went home and told my wife, I was
I
like,
know.
I probably shouldn't
Don't-
have. Well, mostly because of the look in your eyes when I told you guys, I was like, let me give you an example. Like, I was in the elevator going, I gotta go teach this.
No, it
No.
wasn't anything.
Okay, good. So what I'm gonna do though is, so then I'm gonna go to the other side. Well, so first I'm gonna go 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days this way, then I'm gonna cross the street, I'm doing the same thing on all these, then I'm doing the same thing here. Like, chances are pretty good, if you don't know him and you don't know him, maybe this person does or that person does. One of these people is probably gonna have some idea. You're at least gonna be able to tell me when, like.
When he comes home.
Yeah, I can think about some of my neighbors that I don't really know, that I could still kind of tell you, if you were asking me, well, when's the best time to catch them at home? Well, I would do it at this time. So that's what I'm looking for in doing this here, okay? All right, we're out of time. What questions do you have though?
For both, or is there like a heavily weighted question that's better to ask? Cause like, do you want to get like their motivation more than what time they're home? Cause then you kind of have like all your ammo ready to go.
I want both.
You
I
want
mean,
both?
well, because
Equal value.
I mean, I want to know their motivation if I can get it, because that's gonna tell, like, if I talk to a couple of the neighbors and they give me all the same story,
Way something.
then I'm probably like, yeah, I don't know if I even care about going back to it. And then I just move on to the next house and do the same thing. 3 to 5 doors this way, 6 to 10 this way. And the reason I say 3 to 5, if I get good information out of the 3 and or they're home, because that's the other thing is I may go here and they're not home and they may not be home and they might, like if I can talk to all 3 though, and I get a good information, I'm probably not going to 5. I'll probably cross the street, hit back and go the other direction. But then I'm going to leave there and go to this one and do the same thing. Then I'm going to do this one and go to the same thing. Then I'm going to every day be checking this, and anything new that pops up, I'm immediately going out. See, ideally, because the ones with motivation are going to put it right back on the market. If it's been a year and they haven't been back on the market, like I say, right now we're in a unique scenario where it may be expired a year ago and they may be now ready to do it. But typically in life, if it's been a year ago and they haven't put it on, there probably isn't a whole lot of motivation, like just to be honest. So that's why I say I'm going to try to find out from the neighbors what was creating it. But anyway, yes.
Where do we get the signs from?
So bad news on that one. You got to go find a listing first. You got to get somebody, but once you do, then we use, well, you can order them a number of places, but Goodies Signs
Okay.
is who I usually recommend, is you'll order them through them. But yeah, typically you got to get somebody that wants to sell their house. Then you put your sign in, the for sale sign.
Through Century 21 through Goodies, or just we go directly?
You go direct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can get you their information.
What's that turnaround time? Like I have one Hopi, good vibes out there. We're close. Are they 2 weeks out? Typically-
I would say, I don't know exactly. I would say probably a week is
A week
probably,
out?
yeah.
It might be just to get a sign, and put it in your basin or something. or I don't
Yeah, I
know.
was gonna say, you probably should get at least one now.
I'm thinking that because if
Yeah.
I have this one, if she's ready, she might say, put it up, Tuesday or something. And then
Yeah.
if I say, oh.
In the
well, I'm
meantime,
not
if you want to
ready.
use one of mine, I'll let you,
Okay.
because then I'll get the phone call. Say, hey, yeah, sure.
With
All
your
right.
name on it.
That's right, with my name on it. Yeah, well, of course, I'm not gonna have one without my name on it.
Just a little more explanation on the expired, when or how where would they go into this bucket of expired? I guess I'm just.
How do you find them on the MLS? Is that what it
Yeah.
is? Okay, so yeah, on the MLS, you're gonna go do a search. I typically do the full search. And then under the status, you're gonna change it to expired.
Or cancel, can't you do cancel too? or
You could do
not?
canceled as well, huh?
Yeah, because I was looking at it.
Yeah, expired or canceled. If it's off market, don't do it though, because off market, they still have a valid contract in place. So canceled or expired, and then you would go down and put in the expiration date of a year ago.
Okay,
And then once you do that, then after that though, I would go on to the MLS and set that up and save it like as a saved search, but doing it as from the day before. So you're like a days back one, and that way every day it's telling you, here's the one from yesterday. Because ideally you want to start getting these in these areas based on it expired yesterday. I'm on the door today going, hey,
Yeah.
your home came off. Are you still needing to sell? And stuff like that. So let me I'll just wrap it up with this. Let me tell you, unless other questions. But we had an agent down in St. George. I think he's now moved to the Centerville office, but he was an agent in St. George that he did this approach now, but in St. George, a lot of the houses are second homes. So it's not like people are living there year round. So what he did was on some of these, when he couldn't find the owner, because if I'm in St. George for like Rebecca, and I knock on the door and they're not there, I'm gonna be asking the neighbors if they have a phone number for them. Because like if they live in Salt Lake during the summer, okay, great. Do you have a phone number I could get to call them? So that would be, even with the scenario I did here, I may ask a neighbor, do you have a phone number I could call them? And they'll typically go, no, but if you give me a card, I'll have them call you. Great. But anyway, we had an agent down there that found one, and he looked at it and he wrote a letter and mailed it to the address. And I actually got a listing this way too, that I couldn't get a hold of the people. The neighbors didn't know who they were. So I just mailed a letter to this address, hoping they would have their mail forwarded. They did. It forwarded on to where they were in Texas. And then they called me and said, yeah, we need to sell our house still. And it had been off the market for like 6 months, that one that I did. that way. And they were like, we've just been busy and haven't had a chance to do it. And so, yeah, we do need to sell it. And I helped them sell their property. But this agent in St. George did it, mailed it. It was Larry King. You guys know who Larry King is?
Yeah.
Like the Larry King?
The Larry King.
Yeah, it was Larry King's property. And so the mailed the letter, it went to his assistant, who then called him and so he ended up selling Larry King's home in St. George. Actually, they listed it for an even higher price than because he found on the MLS, they listed some information wrong. And he said, if we put this information this way and list it, it will sell. So he did, put it at a higher price, got it sold, and then got a recommendation letter now from Larry King, which is kind of cool. So you could go to sellers and be like, Larry King recommends me. And anyway. All right,
Awesome.
cool. Okay, well, hopefully that's helpful. Sorry I went over. I typically don't do that, but
Thank you.
for whatever
thanks.
reason today, I was excited.
I
to
think
do
you were
this.
just making up for Tuesday.
I was making up for the
Yeah.
horrible thing I did. Hey, for you guys online, if you have not put in your name in the chat box, please do so I can check you off. Otherwise, I'll be telling you you didn't attend this class.
Thank you, Russ.
You're welcome. See y'all next week, if not before.
Rose, do you work in this office? I'm new. so-
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I do.
awesome. Nice to
I'm
meet
down
you.
on the first floor. So you're in this one as well?
Yes.
Cool.
I just started.
Awesome. Well, we're
Tuesday's
excited to have
training
you.
on?
What's that?
What's Tuesday's training?
Let me see.
Started. Alright.
Tuesday is going to be, Tuesday is the activities management class. It's a good one.
So since I missed Tuesday's class, how would I access that online?
If you want to. So one of two things, either you can just wait till the next time it comes around, which is fine too. I just rotate cycle through. Or if you want to watch it, if you go to YouTube
Yeah,
and do a search for Century 21 Everest training,
okay,
and actually, if you just put in Century 21 Everest training lead generation, it'll pop it up at day one and it would be for Tuesday.
okay.
So-
Oh, so Tuesday was day one and that was the
So
start of
today
cycle.
was-
Oh, okay, perfect. So I'm not too far.
Yeah, no, and even like that's just it's the way I do the classes, you can really pop in at any time,
Uh-huh.
drop in, you're fine.
I guess I'm old school. I kind of like it in person, but.
I'm glad you do, because I would rather have everyone in person. And I've kind of gotten to where the ones that are